Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Shain. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting for our 10th annual Aviation Month. I am so grateful to have you here today from ParaFlight EMS, doing great work out there, also helping, not only helping people who are in transport medically, but also delivering organs to very much needed patients. I couldn't be more blessed to have you here today on Savvy to share. Welcome.
Thank you. It is truly my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're fitting us right in after just doing two big jobs there. But share, how did it come across that you decided to create ParaFlight?
So I started my EMS career back in 1993. You know, I was 20 years old and I said, you know what, I think I want to become an EMT. But the seeds were planted when I was a 7-year-old boy, when I used to see my dad, who had become an EMT, and I used to see him. He used to run out of the home and he used to run from his, from his office, and he would go save lives. And I said, you know what, when I get older, that's what I'm going to do. And when I was 20 years old, I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I called one of the local first aid squads. It was called Howell Township First Aid Squad. And I left a message and I said, you know, when they call me back, that's what I'm going to do. And 10 minutes later, they called me back. 10 minutes after that, I met with them. I was accepted. I took my EMT course. I became an EMT in June of 1993. And then I became a paramedic in 2007. And I've been blessed to have some incredible mentors along my journey who were able to guide me. I had a very close friend. His name was Steve Zackheim. Steve, at some point, owned the largest ambulance company in New York City. And Steve was a paramedic as well. He was also a pilot. He owned his own private jet. And he used to send me and others on his jet, again, at no cost, at no charge. He would send us to go fly with patients to specialty hospitals, to rehab centers, for doctor consults, whatever they needed, he would send us. And he actually outfitted his own private jet with oxygen and a stretcher, and it became his own private air ambulance. And then Steve, who owned this ambulance company, unfortunately, at 9/11, he lost 14 of his personnel. And Steve stayed at ground zero for about 30 days. I was a responder too, but I was only there just for that day. Steve developed cancer because of his exposure. And Steve passed away in 2013. But before he passed away, he called me into his room in Sloan Kettering right here in New York City. And he said, I want you to take my plane and I want to open a business and I want you to go change the world. But he said, never forget the charity component, because that's really what it is. Never forget, you always have to give back to others. And I didn't take his plane. He passed away, but I decided I was going to open up a business in his memory. And it's interesting to note that Steve didn't die from the cancer. He didn't. He was cancer-free, had a bone marrow transplant. Everything was cool. The issue that Steve had was that his lungs got so totally destroyed by the chemotherapy that he didn't even have time to get listed. He didn't have time to get listed on the list, and he passed away. 11 months after his diagnosis, he had passed. And Steve had introduced me to another friend, a young boy. His name was Yochi. Yochi, at 8 years old, was a kidney and liver transplant. And then when he was like 18 or 19, he developed interstitial lung disease, and he needed a transplant. By then, Steve had passed away, and I flew with him all over the country, 11 different transplant centers, and everybody turned him down. Everybody turned him down except one transplant center right in New York City, Montefiore Medical Center. And they listed him. They had just started. That's right. They were our first client. Our first transplant client was Montefiore. And we brought him in there and they accepted him. And the sad part is that he didn't make it. He passed away 2 years ago, but he was listed. And his mom, who I speak to all the time, told me as recently as last week that she believes that he lived another 2 years because he had that goal, he had that dream. At least he knew he had a chance of survival. So instead of staying home in bed and curling himself up, he used to walk around with his oxygen, and he was just waiting for that call to come in. And unfortunately, it didn't come in time, and he passed on. But what I do in their memory. I do in their memory to see whatever I can do to make sure that no organs get left on the table. And more importantly, anybody who needs an organ anywhere, and even people, by the way, just so you should know, who aren't our clients, anybody who calls us up, they need an organ transplant, we're going to help them get that.
Wow. Wow, this is amazing, Sim. This is what I find is that people until you're in a crisis where you might need medical attention or an organ yourself, no one really thinks about how do these things get there? Because if you're not in the same state, they have to be flown there. That is just the most quickest way to get organs there. And of course, they can only be on ice for a certain amount of time, or, before they get from one place to another, they have to go from the person they're being taken out of and very quickly brought to the recipient so that they're viable. And that can't be done any other way than via aviation. Are you a pilot, by the way?
If you'll ask me in a couple of weeks, I might have to say, yeah, I'm actually in the middle of training to become a pilot. And it's interesting, by the way, I want you to know that I can't tell you how many times I sat in that right seat and I really, really wanted to just have this dream to be a pilot. And I don't have it. I really don't. I'm a paramedic and I love sitting in the back and treating patients. But I was convinced that as soon as I get into that plane and I take off the first time and I land, that I'm going to love it. And it's the absolute truth. So I just started my training and I cannot wait to become a pilot. Although I really want to be a helicopter pilot. That's really my dream.
It's very, very good dream, because when it comes to search and rescue and those type of things, that is the number one aircraft they use to get into rescue people, because it's the most viable one to dip on in there and get back out and land on top of those hospitals.
That's right. That's what I really want to do. So we're starting with fixed wing, and then we'll probably go on to I'll probably become a rotorcraft pilot as well. So, and then I'll have to decide what speaks to me more and what my passion is, and that's probably what I'll go with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I love the fact that you had a passion for EMS and then you took it and ran with it and have been serving people ever since. Let's say someone's listening in, they're inspired and they say, this sounds like something I could do to make a difference. How would they even begin to get started in being an EMS or doing air EMS? How would they even get started?
Well, you have to start with your dream, as you mentioned, and you just got to pick what your passion is, because we always can find something that we can change our world with. But every state that you're in, you can become an EMT. And then from an EMT, I always encourage people, take it to the next step, start working 911, get to know the system, become a paramedic. And then after you get your paramedic, you can go for your flight certification. It's a process. It's not easy. I would say that you need to be an EMT for at least 2 years before you become a paramedic. Paramedic schooling is probably also about 18 months to 2 years. You need to have, in order to fly, generally about 5 years of active 911 paramedic experience before any program will even consider you. Mm-hmm. And then you go for your flight certification. So I've gotten that. I've gotten my medical escort certifications as I fly with patients on commercial flights as well, all over the world. So if you love what you do, then nothing's a burden, right? Even the challenges that we face, it's uphill, but we just love to do it. We're in training mode all the time. That's what we do. We train and just find your passion, find what you love. And as I say, you'll never work a day in your life. And I truly believe that, I work it seems like 24 hours a day. My phone is always on. I can go to sleep at 2 a.m. and at 3 o'clock we're up because a transplant came in. Yeah. But we love what we do. And it doesn't get better than that. And what could be better than aviation and medicine, right? There's nothing better and nothing more rewarding. That's for sure.
Yeah. And what you're able to do, the impact you're able to make in people's lives. Like you told me, that young boy you were able to help, and then your friend and other people. Now, for other people listening in, you mentioned that when you go for training, it's not an easy process, but if you really, really want it, and that's a good point. A lot of people are like, oh, let me just go and do this doctor thing. It's going to take like 8 years to become a doctor, and then, normal school or college beforehand. But, if you're going at it that way, it's really not a passion of yours. You really want to go with something that you really are inspired by, so that it's not drudgery, because it's not about just going through it and getting to the end. It's about really enjoying your life at the end of the road.
Right. It's always about the journey. And you see that a lot in aviation. I meet with pilots daily and they love what they do. They can talk shop, ask a pilot how difficult his job is. And they say, like, I love my job, right? Yeah. They all love it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. What have you learned? What's the biggest lesson you've learned through being an EMS or working in EMS flight that, has impacted you? If you had to take one lesson away.
So I believe it's not what we get. It's really what we give. And I believe, and I think we all know that at the end of our days, it doesn't matter what we accumulated as far as resources, as far as properties, right? It doesn't matter how our beautiful homes and our houses and jets and helicopters, we don't get to take that with us. We can't even take along a pair of socks. The only thing we get to do is take along our good deeds, right? So we have a small amount of time. We don't even know how long we'll live, right? Steve lived until 59 and Yochi lived until 24. We don't know, but it's a journey that we're on, and we're online. We just don't know where we stand. So we have to make the best of the time that we have and try to change the world. Try to leave a positive imprint on the lives of those we care for and those we love and those we take care of.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if anyone listening in, you never know, they might just need a ParaFlight or organ flights. How do they go about? What does it look like if someone's interested and they need to hire your services? How does that go? How do they go about that?
So they can either just go to our website, paraflight.aero. That's paraflight.aero. They can call our 24/7 dispatch number, 844-538-1911. And then for those in the transplant space, we actually spun off a division for organflights.com. We actually built a special app that's actually on the Android and the Apple stores. It's a free app that we give to both transplant centers and to operators so that we can work very, very quickly. Transplant centers just put their information in of our clients. It gets sent up to our dispatch center, and then we can send it out to well over 100 different operators all over the country. So whoever is able to step right up and save a life. Doesn't get much better than that.
Oh, no, it doesn't. And Sim, I just have to thank you again, Sim Shain, for coming for our 10th Annual Aviation Month. And I'm so blessed that you're the first one on our list for this 10th Annual Aviation Month. Please, everyone, if anyone needs any help, go to paraflight.aero, AERO, or organflights.com. And thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you so much. Truly a pleasure. Have a great day and a great week.
Thank you.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.